All right, welcome back. Harmless Dave over here on the Real Media Observer. So, Russia apparently is going to have a wheat surplus, and they're going to have a surplus starting in the 22-23 season. This comes from a website called Zaya or Zaya. It's ZAWYA.com. And the article says Russia's wheat exports seen rising in new season amid large crop and stockpile. So they're having a record crop. It doesn't say record here, but I've read in other places that they've got more wheat than they know what to do with. And currently here in the United States, we've got empty shelves. We've got a baby food problem. Of course, the Defense Production Act was just, put into place. So that will only take 2 or 3 months to actually work. Whereas, if we were taking exports from Russia, which we're not going to take, I think this problem might be less severe, or would have been less severe, if we weren't sanctioning Russia into oblivion. The problem is the sanctions aren't working. The Russian economy has stabilized. You're not, of course, going to hear this in the so-called mainstream news, the media industrial complex. All they know how to say is, hey, Russia is doing really bad, right? They're going to lose because Ukraine is on the march and we're sending them weapons, and now we're sending them $40 billion, which passed. The 40 billion went through. And we had 11 senators vote against it. I think it was 59 congressmen. By the way, all Republicans, not saying Republicans are good, but the little remnant of fiscal sanity and understanding that if we were going to spend lots of money on infrastructure and trying to get our own energy, which we're doing away with gas and oil leases, we've decided that during a national crisis, the best thing to do to solve that problem is to make the problem worse, right? And we can talk about all the other kinds of energy. I'm open to solar, I'm open to wind, I'm open to all these things when they're ready for prime time, when they're ready to run the country. But they're not ready. And I'm not saying build 100 coal-fired plants, although China and India are doing that. And I don't hear about any energy crisis in Russia, because guess what? Russia has their own food and Russia has their own oil. Oopsie. When you sanction a country that's largely self-sufficient, it does nothing. Now, would they like to sell their products to other places? Of course they would. And they still are. India, China. I mean, those are two superpowers, or emerging superpowers, right? Actually, I would say China is already a superpower. India is kind of an emerging superpower with a huge population. And by the way, at least India has done exactly the opposite of what, the World Health Organization says to do. Russia, too. A lot of people don't talk about the fact that Russia did exactly the opposite. Like their medical guys, their doctors, their experts basically said to do the opposite of what the little emperor has said to do here in the United States. All these things are kind of tied together. The fact that Russia has pride in its country, the fact that Russia doesn't get into all of this woke stuff. And yeah, there'll be some authoritarians over there that say, knock it off. And it's not that I want, a strong man to come in and tell everybody what to do with their life. But when something is damaging the culture and the productivity, and quite honestly, this idea of pursuing happiness that we have here in the United States, when something is getting in the way of that, then I do think at some point law enforcement needs to be involved. And I'm not even sure what that looks like right now, because so many voices are clamoring for different things. But in this article, in this video, I just want to highlight the fact that Russia has wheat and the United States doesn't, right? I mean, we have some, But again, there is going to be famine across the third world, and Russia can solve that problem if NATO and everybody else says, you know what, just let's let them do what they need to do here. But my guess is other countries are going to suffer because of NATO and its pride in this situation, that it can't admit at this point that they have created. See, NATO has created a new world order. I mean, think about it, right? It was supposed to be all these countries, and you're hearing about Sweden and Finland and everything. But so what? So what? I mean, it doesn't sound good. If you're a Russian citizen, if you're a Russian political figure, and you're hearing more talk about an expanding NATO, when one of your requests here is that the encroachment stop. This is why Russia went into Ukraine. The main reason is that the eastern part of Ukraine was getting shelled for the last 8 years, getting shelled, right, since 2014. And there are a bunch of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. By the way, same type of person that shot up the supermarket in Buffalo, New York. Same type. And it wasn't a MAGA, wasn't an ultra MAGA, wasn't, friends with Steve Bannon or anything. Nope. And again, I'm not defending Steve Bannon. I'm just saying this is certainly somebody who has more in line with some of the more radical elements on the left and not the right, but it's being portrayed, of course, that he was into this replacement thing, and that the people who support Trump or MAGA, it's ridiculous. It's just, I don't even know how to navigate what the media does anymore. The guy's manifesto was very confusing, and he certainly empathized with more things on the left. He doesn't like Fox News, for instance, and he didn't like conservatives. So if he's one of those ultra MAGA types, he certainly didn't adhere to that. Basically, the guy was a lunatic, right? He's a mental health patient. And that's what people should take away from it. They shouldn't be trying to say, okay, he's that ideology, so we need to do breaking news about how he was affiliated with the people who went to the Capitol on January the 6th, right? No, it's not the same type of person. Sorry. So anyway, let's get back to this story about Russia and their wheat stockpile. And this comes from, again, a website that's not a mainstream site. Again, it's zawya.com. This article came out just a couple of days ago. Russia has the potential to export 39 million tons of wheat. Russia, one of the world's largest wheat exporters, will export more of the grain in the new July-June marketing season due to a large harvest and stockpile. So with all these countries that are refusing to take food from Russia, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. The country's exports are crucial for a global wheat supply, especially in the upcoming season, as Ukraine's Black Sea ports remain blocked after Moscow sent tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine. Well, here's the thing. I thought that Ukraine was winning. So, why is this a problem? I mean, if Ukraine is winning, then they should be able to export their own wheat, right? So again, Russia may export 39 million tons of wheat in the 22-23 season, which starts on July 1st. In the current season, experts say that 32 to 32.5 million tons will be exported. So they're still putting out a ton of wheat. And where is this wheat going? Probably India, China. There are a few countries that, as Putin says, that aren't unfriendly to Russia. He calls the United States an unfriendly country, and other countries that have decided to go in with the sanctions. And here's the dirty little secret. The sanctions have had They initially had some effect on Russia, but Russia is a self-sufficient country. They produce their own energy and they produce their own food. And they seem to care about their own people and not just, I know there are Russian oligarchs, right? But see, the oligarchs kind of coexist with the population, and the population is being fed, and gas prices in Russia are like $2.50 a gallon using American conversion. So things are far better in Russia for the average person than they are globally for pretty much everybody else, unless, again, you're not unfriendly to Russia. If you are friendly with Russia, then I think you'll be treated fairly well. And you say, well, Russia did this horrible, unprovoked thing. Again, 8 years of shelling is not unprovoked. The fact that there is a neo-Nazi component to this, and again, the Buffalo shooter had the same kind of logo on his arm as they have over in Mariupol and other places in the Ukraine. So I don't know. A lot of people, I guess the regular media can't do these connections, whereas I read a couple of articles and I go, oh, so the guy had a lot in common with what's going on over in Ukraine. And the media, of course, has been cheerleading for Ukraine. Ukraine, by the way, has its own wheat, and a lot of that wheat probably won't be harvested because much of the country is getting destroyed. And the more weapons we send over there for Ukraine to prolong this, the less food everybody is going to have, because, again, Russia will be preoccupied with this, and obviously Ukraine won't be able to export a whole lot of wheat. In 2022, the wheat crop in Russia is expected to reach 85 million tons. It's called a conservative estimate. He previously estimated 83.5 million tons, up from 76 million tons. So they're having a huge crop. That's should be good news, right? But because the world is in turmoil, where is this wheat going to go? Maybe Russia will feel as though they need to do the humanitarian thing and try to get it to third world countries. I don't know. It doesn't appear that NATO is going to take a whole lot of this wheat. Although, again, Germany has had some mixed signals when it comes to this. I think they really do want to take care of their own people, and they don't have a plan B. Anyway, another agriculture consultant in Moscow on Wednesday raised its forecast for Russia's wheat crop by 1.2 million tons to the record high of 88.6 million tons amid good weather conditions, adding that it could upgrade it further. So if you're a spiritual person and you're in Russia and you prayed for food and rain and good weather, guess what? The blessing came through, right? I mean, I could just hear this in the back of my head. You know, God is blessing Russia despite how evil they are, right? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. It's just something that popped in my head. So, asked about the possibility of an export ban from Russia, they said it was unlikely, as the country would have a large crop and record high carryover stocks. Russia's strategic goal now is to ensure uninterrupted exports of what may be a massive harvest. So Russia, despite what you're going to hear in the news, has a plan to continue exporting wheat. And there is a tax that they are raising as well when they export. Russia, which competes mainly with the European Union and Ukraine for wheat supplies to the Middle East and Africa, has been limiting its exports with taxes and a quota since 2021 amid efforts to slow domestic food inflation. Interesting. But again, not all of those relationships have gone south. No pun intended. those relationships in Africa, I guarantee you, are intact because the people there will starve to death if this continues. So all of the chaos, crisis, chaos, however you want to say it, that's my phrase and I get it mixed up. But all of that seems to not be working when it comes to food production in Russia. Russia can make their own food and they can make their own energy. Food and energy, duh, okay? The United States right now, not so much. I mean, you got Bill Gates buying up farmland all over the place. You've got all these regulations going in California. They still don't know how to do water management. They don't know how to do forestry management. So their whole state is a mess. Farmers in some places can't get water for their crops. And yeah, there's climate change. If you want to throw that in there, there's always going to be climate change, by the way, because the climate is always changing. So, you know, whether you believe in the man-made kind or just the natural kind, you know, Russia apparently, though, is benefiting from the climate change. They must be, because they're going to have a record crop. Whereas here in the United States, you know, all we can do is put the Defense Production Act into gear so babies can get fed, which is really embarrassing. And you've got to start to ask yourself, if you're just sort of an agnostic person when it comes to geopolitics, is this all really worth it, what we're doing when it comes to Russia? Is it worth it? Because, you know, we don't have energy, we don't have food. Of course, we could be like Russia and be self-sufficient. This is the mind-blowing part of this, is our politicians don't just say, you know what, fine, we don't like Russia, we'll make our own stuff. But you know what we do? We go, fine, we don't like Russia, so we're going to have to look elsewhere. Saudi Arabia, right? Venezuela. Imagine we're starting to, but we almost did regime change war in Venezuela, and now we're going to beg for Venezuelan oil, right? And that country is teetering on the brink. And so this is madness. You know, whether you like Trump or not, the idea of us doing it ourselves and taking care of our own people with our own resources is a far better idea than finding rogue regimes, you know, tapping into the great Saudi Arabia, who is far more guilty of real war crimes and real abuse than Russia will ever be, at least the current Russia, not the old Soviet Union. So in any event, I found it quite interesting that Russia is going to have a huge crop and nobody is reporting on how much wheat they actually have. And again, it's almost like, here's a carrot. Here, you're going to take the carrot? No, we're not going to take the carrot. We're going to bite our nose off to spite our face and say, no, we aren't going to take any of that Russian wheat. And that would go for all the NATO countries. And guess what? America will say, be strong. Don't feed your people. Don't lower your prices. Don't try to stop inflation. Don't do it. I don't care if Russia gives you a great deal. Just stand strong so we can defeat these evil Russians. And we're going to send more weapons. We got $40 billion on the way, which is mind-blowing. It's just a proxy war. It's an economic war, and it's going to be a hot kinetic war for a long time if we don't start butting out of Ukraine. But I don't see that stopping, because this current administration, this is all they've got. And all of these Republicans, too, that are going along with this, you know, you had 59 in the House vote against it, and you had 11 in the Senate, and Rand Paul tried his parliamentary trick there. None of it stopped it. The $40 billion is going to Ukraine. And that's just going to offset their own wheat production and Russia's ability to service other places that are going to be in with this NATO cabal, which, again, people are going to suffer and die because they don't have food. And these oligarchs here in this country, which are basically wedded to our own government or are in our own government. You don't think Nancy Pelosi is an oligarch? She is. She is. No question about it. You don't think that Pick a politician, really, almost any politician who went in with nothing and now is essentially a rich SOB and is calling shots for us little people. Let them eat cake. So I'd like to have some wheat, never mind the cake, but maybe American farmers, they'll increase production, even though Bill Gates owns a whole bunch of land and everybody is encouraging farmers, hey, don't farm as much. We're going to make this food in a lab. It's going to be great. We got the bio milk coming soon, right? And we got the synthetic beef that is so tasty. People don't even know the difference. By the way, you got to have a soybean crop if you want to have an Impossible Burger. So either way, there's not going to be food for those who want the meat or those who don't want the meat. Doesn't matter. I mean, we need some protein here, and we're not eating bugs, despite what Klaus Schwab thinks we ought to do. All right. Lots of good news in that video, eh? See you soon.